It's Friday, September 10th at 10 a.m. This is a meeting of the evaluation committee for the 95 Lawrence Road proposals. We've got a little bit of an issue we're working on, which is it's not clear that the first presenter has the correct meeting link. So we're trying to sort that out, and just please bear with us.
Harry, if I may, it's Kathleen.
Yep.
We have someone here whose last name is Perlmutter.
Yep.
They might be the first present, if you can contact them through the chat.
Yeah, it wasn't the name that was identified to me.
Okay.
But if you are from the community builders, just unmute yourself and identify yourself.
Yeah, I don't think we have anybody yet.
No.
I think they're using the other link, which I can understand why, because that's what they were sent.
Okay, well, let me see if I can
I'm trying to contact.
find a phone number and call somebody here. Okay, senior project manager.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Gary, Jim, Olga, Jan, Elaine, Harry, the tech genius, Jay. I'm very excited to be here. I hope you are too.
Yep, we are. We just want to make sure we get everybody here.
Yeah.
So I just contacted Civico to let them know to try the town calendar link. We got in touch with POA and TCB. Harry, did you make me co-host so I can keep an eye out?
I certainly can. Make a co-host. Okay, there you are. So that's done.
All right. Sorry for the delay, folks, but we have to make sure we get everybody here that needs to be here. I might try calling Becky.
Okay.
Harry, oh,
Yep.
it's Lindsay. Okay.
Yep.
Should I try logging on to the other meeting and seeing?
Okay, well, she's the presenter for TCB.
Right.
So she's the person we need. So she's found her way to the right place.
Okay.
So let's see. We have, I think.
Okay. Could we have Lindsay just unmute and we'll confirm?
Yep.
Yes, hi. I am just emailing with my team here to make sure that they get the updated hello.
Hello.
Yep.
Sorry about the confusion.
Oh, that's fine. This is always the way of Zoom. So let me just quickly take a moment and just make sure.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, let's.
Okay, there's Rebecca. Here comes Becky. Okay. Just let us know when you've gotten in touch with people, Lindsay.
Okay, great. And
Lindsay, do you want to wait for anybody else to come on from?
yes, I will have a couple others joining me,
Okay.
and I'm just reaching out to them to make sure.
Okay. While you're doing that, I'll just confirm that this is the meeting of the 95 Lawrence Road Task Force Evaluation Committee. We have a busy morning ahead of us. We'll be hearing from the 3 proposers that responded to our RFP.
Okay.
And the general, we'll introduce the task force in a moment, and then we'll turn it over to the community builders, our first proposers. After a presentation by the developers, the committee will get to ask some questions. We will not be taking questions from the public today, but we're very glad that you're here. And also want to let you know that this meeting is being recorded and that it will be accessible, I believe, on the town YouTube channel afterwards.
Okay, and Lindsay, I've made you a co-host so you can share screen and so forth.
Perfect.
Okay.
I think we are waiting for our architect, Michael Kim, to join. Kyle, would you mind following up with him? Thanks.
Sure. I wonder if we should just get started even without him.
Yeah, that's great. We will jump right in here.
Okay.
Okay, well, Lindsay, before you start, let me just call on our evaluation committee to introduce themselves. So you know who everyone is, and I'll call your first name and then just please introduce yourself. And hosting and enabling the screen sharing today is Harry.
Good morning. I'm Harry Turkanian.
Jay.
Good morning. I'm Jay Horowitz.
Kathleen.
Good morning, Kathleen Bacon.
Gary.
Gary Sorkin.
Jim.
Jim's muted, but that was
Jim is
Jim.
muted. There's Jim Hood. But thank you for muting yourself.
Sorry.
That's
Okay. Jan
Jan Plowey, good morning.
and Olga.
Olga Khan, hi.
Hi, and I'm Elaine McElroy, Chair of the 95 Lawrence Task Force Committee. And welcome to Community Builders. We're very excited to be here today and to hear from you.
Wonderful. All right, we'll jump right in. Can folks see our presentation here?
Yes.
All right, great.
I'm Andy Waxman. I'm with the Community Builders. I'm going to start off our presentation today. I oversee our real estate development work throughout New England. Thank you for the opportunity for us to present our proposal to you for 95 Lawrence Road. We know that this group has been meeting since 2018 and has put in enormous effort to get to this point. We congratulate you for getting this far, and we hope that you will pick us to be your development partner. Before others on our team present the project specifics, I want to give you an overall introduction to our organization. So what is the Community Builders? We're a nonprofit organization whose mission is to build and sustain strong communities where all people can thrive. We accomplish our mission in a number of ways. We develop, own, and manage affordable housing, and we also invest in neighborhoods and empower our residents by connecting them to services and opportunities. Where do we do this? We're in 14 states and the District of Columbia, where we own and manage 12,000 apartment homes. Though we have a large footprint and have become one of the largest nonprofit affordable housing developers in the country, Massachusetts is where we started and where we are headquartered. About a third of what we own and manage is here in Massachusetts. And focusing closer to Wellfleet, we have nearly 350 apartments that we own and manage on the Cape and the islands. So we are not strangers to this area. Our 50 years of experience in Massachusetts means that we have an extensive understanding of local financing, local contractors, permitting processes, and have deep relationships that serve our properties and the communities where we work. I understand that some committee members have visited our Lake Street property in Chatham and Nookchoke Village in Westport, and perhaps you'll be visiting Province Landing in Provincetown. We're glad you've gotten the chance to see our properties. We know what it takes to develop on the Cape and do it well, and how to deal with the many nuances that make the Cape great. One important measurement of success of our Cape properties is that our occupancy rates are well above industry averages with very little turnover over many years. In part, we take this as a vote of confidence in our housing, though we also know it's a sign of limited supply of this type of housing. Nonetheless, this low occupancy rate is one example of why TCB's property management has received numerous awards and accolades for our excellence in property management. Another point I want to emphasize is that we're here for the long term. We're not a developer that develops, then sells, or otherwise hands off property to someone else. We're invested for the long term, both financially and otherwise. By integrating development and property management in one company, it means that the operators of the property are at the table throughout the development process, which leads to a better long-term result. Another aspect of TCB that I want to underscore further is our community life department, our version of resident services. We work to provide more than just a roof over residents' heads, but also connect them to resources that are tailored to their specific needs. Two areas of TCB innovation and expertise that particularly apply to the Lawrence Road project are our experience in mixed income housing and in green design. In terms of mixed income housing, we're leaders in developing and managing buildings that go beyond traditional affordable housing to also include people in middle and moderate income tiers. One example is our AO Flats project in Boston, which was the first to close and lease up using the relatively new state of Massachusetts workforce housing funds. AO Flats has won 2 design awards and is a finalist for the illustrious ULI National Workforce Housing Award. TCB really values mixed income communities and seeks out opportunities to grow this part of our portfolio. We're also leaders in developing green, sustainable communities. We've completed multiple passive house projects, with our most recent in Northampton, Massachusetts, as well as various LEED Gold and LEED Platinum buildings. Our approach to green design is to continually push what we can achieve while also not being so far on the cutting edge where experimental technologies might not work over the long term. Beyond the specifics of what we do and areas of expertise that we have, I want to say a little bit more about TCB's approach to development and how we would work with you should you select us. While preparing our proposal, we carefully reviewed the RFP and provided a thorough response that sought to honor your requests, limits, and requirements. At the same time, I want to emphasize that this is a preliminary project concept. Any real estate project will evolve from the concept stage through a full design process and into construction. An important value at TCB is listening and being responsive to community concerns. We want to partner with you as we move the project forward and as we make the inevitable tweaks and adjustments so as to end up with a project that fully meets your goals. In closing my section of the presentation, I want to get back to the basics of the opportunity that your RFP presented. We all know the great need for affordable housing on the Cape and in Wellfleet in particular. At TCB, you will have a partner that truly values serving a mix of incomes, from the lowest income individuals to the service workers that have trouble finding housing nearby, to more moderate income people who also need more housing options. Wellfleet has a great opportunity to serve people at all these levels, and offering this public land is a critical way to achieve this goal. TCB is a tried and true organization. Our award-winning properties, long-standing and repeat relationships with municipalities are all proof. And while we have been around for a long time, innovation and out-of-the-box thinking for how to solve housing challenges is in our DNA. We hope you will choose us as your partner. Now let me hand it to Lindsay Gale, who will get into more of the specifics of our proposal.
Hello again, everyone. So what I have up here is a brochure I'm sure you've all seen, and it's around town, and it's calling for housing angels. And really this brochure says it all. Wellfleet faces several intertwined housing challenges that have been exacerbated by COVID. Low housing supply and high home prices are both the cause and effect of this issue. Year-round residents, seasonal visitors, seasonal workers, and now remote workers as well compete for extremely limited housing supply in town. And an increasingly lucrative short-term rental market results in affordable housing being removed from the year-round supply. Property owners right now can earn more by renting their homes out for only a short period of time in the summer than by renting to year-round tenants. These conditions have created numerous problems, of course, most critically that of residents being pushed out. But also it's contributing to gridlock traffic exacerbated by employees who work on the Cape but can't afford to live here, so must commute in. And we see employers and establishments desperate to hire help to keep their businesses running. And then of course the myriad trickle-down impacts of this. So our proposal seeks to address this need, which was so well enunciated in your RFP, with careful analysis of the market in Wellfleet, as well as drawing on our experience managing properties on the Cape. We propose a program of 46 apartment units that are serving households at 30%, 60%, and 80% AMI and above. So we are proposing here 6 units at 30% area median income. These units would have vouchers attached to them, so households would not pay more than 30% of their income. And just by way of example, an individual making about $20,000 a year would be able to live here. Now that many home health aides earn that salary. So this is a great example of a critical labor force that is right now being pushed out of town and is really important here, especially in the face of demographic shifts, which are moving towards an increasing number of older households that will require such services. We have 27 units eligible up to 60% of area median income. So looking at the graph from the Wellfleet Housing Trust brochure, this is people working in retail, food services, arts and rec. It's a significant and critical population of Wellfleet and largely the backbone of the service economy here. So, I know we all understand the importance of this population and the fact that they're being pushed out. We're proposing 13 units at 80% AMI. So for example, an individual making $54,000 would be eligible at this tier. So that could include folks working in construction, perhaps teachers, municipal workers. I do want to note that our proposal stated more specifically that we propose this workforce moderate tier to be targeted around 80% to 100 AMI. So the exact income level should be guided by an in-depth market study, which would confirm exactly what the market rent is so that we could target rents appropriately. And then we can additionally split this tier into, say, both an 80% AMI tier and a 100 to 110% tier so that we can serve an even wider swath of households. Now, the proposed unit mix is informed by the current needs of the community, as well as looking at future demographic projections. So here we're seeking to balance providing the need for ample family housing, also with the need for ample smaller units to house a growing older population, enable options for downsizing, aging in place. The average household size in Wellfleet is a two-person household. So this unit mix is targeted about to that average, although tilting a little bit larger, just so we can make sure we are providing that critical housing for families. And again, the large number of smaller units is a good fit, not only for aging households, but also for young, single, two-person working workforce households. And then I'll just note that we also include 4 apartments for persons with disabilities. And this is in response for to the request in the RFP to provide housing that can serve a diversity of households, and including those with disabilities. We proposed 53 parking spaces on site, which equates to a 1.15 parking ratio. So this is based on the fact that the project proposes 60% of the units as studios and 1 bedrooms, which typically only have 1 car per household. So we kept the parking to a minimum in order to maximize the amount of green space, buffering, and then also minimize impervious area and the subsequent stormwater runoff impacts on this site and the abutting properties. So we know parking is always a hot topic, of course, and would wish to further discuss this and work together. If the community and committee feels that a 1.15 parking ratio is not adequate, as you can see on the site plan, there's ample space on site to add more parking spaces should it be needed. So just by way of example, adding 7 spaces would bring the total ratio to 1.3. So we would look forward to continuing to work with the town to analyze and determine the appropriate number of spaces, as well as other aspects of the program that I just went through. There we go.
Good morning. I'm Michael Kim. I'm the architect for the design of our proposal. We're very happy to be here virtually. You have no idea how much we're looking forward to being there in person. In the all too short period of time we had to approach this project, there was an ongoing theme that emerged very quickly, and that was to tread lightly. It's no small challenge to build 46 units in an appropriate and respectful way so that, clear to your vision, it will fit in Wellfleet. We started the project even before visiting the site with an inventory and study of the typologies, both historic and current, for this type of project. But it emerged very quickly that the answer to the question of how we make such a large development fit in Wellfleet, the answer to that question would be found in Wellfleet. So we walked every street within a mile or so radius of the site and went looking for answers. And in this case, the answers are good. First of all, Wellfleet has country roads, and excuse me for being Captain Obvious, but some of the roads are rather narrow. This is not your normal suburban residential standard development. It responds to a different fabric unique to the Outer Cape and especially to Wellfleet. Wellfleet houses its population in houses, or at least residentially scaled buildings. They are simple in form and durable. So most of the buildings here, thank you to the Historical Society, are largely still in place and still in use. Wellfleet buildings are also frugal, or as my teenagers would call me, cheap. They have a very light form of construction, but remarkably, they have proven very durable. That's due to a commitment to its austerity, as well as a commitment to its maintenance. It's also frugal in planning. For instance, driveways are only there to the amount necessary. Garages are rare, and asphalt does not meet building in Wellfleet. Wellfleet's small-scale, simple houses often achieve elegance in their simplicity. Now, as a designer who has devoted a career toward this end, that's no small accomplishment. They're very thoughtfully done when successful, and they tread lightly by having very little extraneous elements but as a result, achieve a directness and a simplicity that is both beautiful and durable. And the appeal of living in Wellfleet is also durable. It's been there for centuries, and it largely has to do with a connection to the elements. There's a connection to the outdoors that needs to be respected, or in my notes, don't mess this up. As a result, we want to tread lightly. We want to respect the environment, and we want to build with as small a footprint as possible. So our site strategy takes its cue from the neighboring street patterns. So we have two different streets and two different developments that have slightly different personalities. They're tenuously connected, largely for service and emergency, but we allow both what we're calling Schoolhouse Corner and Lawrence Green to have their own personalities. Schoolhouse Corner, and we're calling these names for illustrative purposes. Obviously, they might change and they might actually be named. But Schoolhouse Corner is a pocket neighborhood consisting of 15 units, 16 parking spaces, and it centers around a green space, what we're calling the recreation common. The site planning involved in the pocket neighborhood puts the parking to the outside and green space in the middle. We also have privacy with a retaining wall between the development and the ball field, which offers a privacy where we're one level down by the time we get to the common. The largest factor in Schoolhouse Corner is the schoolhouse. It is one of the largest buildings in Wellfleet, and we're hoping to get synergies with the school, both in form and in use, because frankly, a lot of people, young and old, do prefer to live close to a school. So in the massing, what we're doing is we're starting top right with the school building itself, and then bookending it with the larger building at the other side. So that defines the central green space. So the idea, especially by calling the Schoolhouse Corner, we have an aggregate that is greater than some of its parts, becomes part of the identity of the school area. We're also taking advantage of the slope of the site. When you come up from the road, there's a full story difference in grades. We're tucking 3 units with direct garden access out from Old Pond Road. So that gives us a smaller footprint and enables us to minimize the impact. The rendering shows the advantage of a pocket neighborhood in that it opens onto a common. This encourages indoor-outdoor use. It also shows the residential scale of the buildings. We have 15 units here, but it looks like 5 homes. The buildings on the right are 1.5 stories. We build into a hill, so there's a story below. And the largest building, 4 units, is simply 2.5 stories. Again, a residential scale. The northern portion we're calling Lawrence Green, and this takes the country road topology. It consists of 12 residentially scale buildings housing 31 apartment units and a community building. A very deliberate choice to build a greater number of smaller buildings. Now we're borrowing greatly again from the context. We have things like ribbon roads, especially for the service road. There's an intrigue of entrances in Wellfleet. Several of the buildings have 1, 2, 3 front doors. We don't know exactly what's in them, and the building isn't really telling us. And most of the forms are simple forms, but they gain variety by aggregation of those forms, and that's a strategy we're trying to employ here. The aerial view shows a hamlet at the end of the road. Like Schoolhouse Green, we're placing the parking on the perimeter, which gives us a common green space in the center. One thing I'd like to point out here is the aggregation of simple forms. And if you look into the steeper roofs, we have a number of attics that we're building into. And I'll mention that a little further as we get a little further on. Now, a natural result of the strategy of placing smaller buildings together with an eye to the community is that you get a very humanely scaled, approachable, and even friendly outdoor space. This is what we mean by treading lightly. Now, looking at the outside of the buildings, it's very easy to label this as a historicist or nostalgic design. But if you look at it a little more closely, I think you get a much richer understanding of what's going on. The architecture the frugal architecture in Wellfleet has lasted over 100 years. And that's part due to its small scale, its lack of embellishment, and also its choice of renewable materials. We want to keep that language, but there are new assemblies that are common now in the building community. I'll point to two: engineered lumber and warm roof technologies, a form of spray and insulation being the biggest part of that. That enables us to build into the roofs. The insulated envelope goes up to the top of the building, enabling the space to expand into it. These are modern spaces that are built very simply. One thing I do want to point out is by advocating small, simple buildings, anyone can build these. We can recruit good local and smaller builders. We are employing the standard array of green technologies that, quite frankly, everyone knows how to do now. But by building simply, we can focus on building these things tight. And most of the systems or standards use a point system, and we don't get points for good craftsmanship. But we know, frankly, we've built about 400 projects across New England, that craftsmanship is one of the biggest factors in achieving, in reality, the theoretical efficiency of the buildings. So I'll get off my soapbox now. That's one thing we get by simplicity. We get something that works. I mentioned those attic spaces. This is about a 500 square foot studio, a design that we've been developing over the years that builds up into the attics. What happens there is you get space, you get modern space. One of the real victories of the modernists, including the ones that worked on the Cape, is that in the hundreds of projects, resident projects we've done, I can probably count on two hands the people who did not want clean, bright, airy, modern spaces inside, no matter what it is on the outside. So what we're achieving here is space that's now entered the American image of home, bright, airy, space with good cross ventilation and so forth, within a proven durable package, which I think is a lot better than the other way around. But both maintain the image of home. So we can achieve this space in an atmosphere that has a small footprint, treads lightly, and fits in Wellfleet. So making a space that's unique to Wellfleet really starts with the design from the ground up. And that by definition means it starts from the land.
So using a ground up and tread lightly approach, our team believes that the site context not only relates to the building architecture and the design aesthetic of the community, but also the site's natural environment. An important design lesson we have learned at Horsley Witten over the last 30 years is that the site's context really matters. A site that is designed to match its surroundings can lead to a simpler, more maintainable design that protects our environment, embraces natural processes, and takes advantage of the site's soil, topography, and surrounding plant communities. So prior to putting pen to paper, Michael and I walked the site and we performed a GIS analysis to identify site constraints and opportunities. The upland portion of the Lawrence Green area has characteristics of the classic Outer Cape landscape of a pitch pine oak forest community, and to be quite honest, which I fell in love with and has led me to move to the Cape. In the eastern portion near the water tower has been cleared of trees to build the tower, but this provides a nice snapshot of what a sustainable landscape might look like with drought tolerant grasses. And this area provides a nice transition to the lower sloping area east of the ball field or the schoolhouse corner. This area is more densely wooded, provides a really nice buffer between the existing ball field and the lower portion, and has the characteristics of a maritime woodland forest, providing a greater tree canopy and a denser understory, and feels a little tucked away from the upper portion of the site. Taking all of this information into consideration, we believe a less linear, more meandering roadway layout allows the design to be adaptable to the site and provide flexibility when locating the site elements such as green spaces and stormwater management. The overall emphasis in our design is on the more organic layout and the natural landscape, which we believe provides opportunities to nicely blend bioswales and rain gardens into the site to provide stormwater treatment, as well as create low mow meadows and preserve native plantings. The well-drained soils at the site also provide a great opportunity for groundwater recharge through subsurface infiltration. We've also located a shared decentralized wastewater treatment system with the leach field located under the ball field and the treatment system providing along the eastern edge with a buffer to our neighboring property. So taking cues from the site, we look to first preserve the buffer surrounding the ball field. We then want to minimize earth moving and grading to protect and preserve existing trees and reduce clearing. And this is an important element, as this is a lesson that's been learned on past projects, that it pays real big dividends by identifying groups of trees to be protected. We also would provide a transition to the woodland edge with stormwater opportunities at the perimeter parking lot. The image you see here is actually a stormwater practice as well as a woodland transition. We've identified low mow meadow grass areas that can provide a nice transition from the upper to the lower portion of the site, and located in the area where we're proposing the emergency access via a cart path. We've also identified that low maintenance native foundation plantings would be well suited and would blend in nicely with the surrounding environment. So taking advantage of the buffers, we've identified opportunities to create woodland paths that would not only connect the residents of the community of this development, but to the surrounding community. We've also identified the incorporation of stormwater management practices into our community green spaces that would then create sort of informal spaces that would allow people to experience the outdoor environment and also present opportunities for nature play for children. We've also identified some pocket parks in the lower portion of the site or the schoolhouse corner, and we would propose using natural elements such as boulders or granite to create really informal seating and make these spaces very intimate and very close to nature. So on the wastewater side of things, we propose a combination of both gravity and force main collection system to use to deliver the wastewater to the proposed system. The disposal beds would, as I mentioned earlier, would be located under the ball field. An advanced wastewater treatment system capable of meeting less than 10 milligrams per liter. of total nitrogen is proposed on the southeast corner. The proposed plan can accommodate the full build out of the shared community system, which has a design of 35,000 gallons per day. Or we could convert this to an individual treatment system solely for the purposes of the development meeting the Title V requirements. So we really have planned for a standalone Title V system if this is necessary. And we would recommend that both the leach field and the wastewater treatment system would be located in the same spots as the shared system. And lastly, we also looked for solar array opportunities within the site. And we did identify the area where the wastewater treatment plant or a facility is located, but this would need to be further explored, and we would need to take into account the impacts on the new on the wastewater treatment system, as well as our abutting neighbor.
So circling things up here, we've presented our proposal, and you know, the urgency of the housing crisis in Wellfleet necessitates immediate action. And we're excited and ready to hit the ground running and make this project happen. Once developer selection occurs, we would be ready to immediately go into community engagement, get going with permitting, with the aim to start construction as early as 2023 or early 2024. As Andy mentioned and others mentioned, we're eager to dig into the proposed design in more detail and work with the committee, the wider community, abutters, key officials such as the fire department and water department to really hone this program and design in. Now, you, the selection committee, have a truly challenging decision in front of you with 3 compelling proposals. However, we believe our team and proposal is the best choice for the Wellfleet community. Our proposal presents a well thought through approach to locating 46 apartment units sustainably on this site. We marry concepts of a pocket neighborhood layout with a more commonly seen suburban style home duplex circulation to present a truly unique and effective concept, blending traditional styles and lessons from historic Cape construction, drawing on the best technologies and design lessons of modernity, keeping the height of buildings below 2.5 stories, and utilizing ample and naturally styled landscape buffering throughout. We have a proposal that will not only fit right in, but also enhance the immediate neighborhood. Also, our proposal and our team is mission driven. Our proposal to construct housing for households at 30, 60, and 80% AMI and above, we believe will make a great dent in serving the needs, the affordable housing needs in Wellfleet. TCB's award-winning property management and community life programs will provide key wraparound services. And it also means that we can serve the residents well and be great partners to you and the immediate neighborhood. TCB has been working in affordable housing development for 50 years with 340 units already on the Cape. Our in-house design, construction, finance, leasing, compliance, property management, resident services, and other expertise means that we are a one-stop shop. So any issues or communication starts and ends with us, and it's our personal responsibility. So this choice is really about both the developer partner team and the overall concept proposed. We hope we've shown you how and why we believe our proposal and ourselves to be the best partners for you in this project. And we really look forward to further discussion. And again, I want to sincerely thank you for your time and the opportunity to present.
Well, thank you. I think we have a little bit of time for questions. I do want to afford the committee members a chance for a short break before the next presentation also. I don't know whether, Elaine, you would like to start with questions, or how you'd like to proceed to do
Um,
this?
Well, yeah, Harry, why don't you, if you have one you'd like to start with, go ahead, and then I will. And
I guess there are a couple. We've been able to see 3 projects in a very careful and thorough manner, and walked through another one. And one of the common, kind of universal comment that we got from the management staff at these places was climate control issues for individual units. Some of the older projects relied on window air conditioners. They were management problems in terms of maintenance and damage to buildings and all kinds of stuff. How do you think the best way to handle tenant climate control issues might be?
Maybe I can start with that, and then I'll pass it on to Michael. And Ivy Bueno is also here on the call. She's our in-house design and construction. So, first off, I think part of what Michael was talking about was the borrowing from historic building elements that help control climate naturally, even without artificial HVAC systems. So building tightly with insulation, but also taking advantage of the climate in Wellfleet, which is often mild, and allowing that natural circulation, which is something that through the passive house certification, you're not really enabling that. And we do also propose here to have heating and cooling HVAC systems. And Ivy or Michael, if you want to speak a little bit more to what we're proposing here, which is informed by our experience. I agree, we hear from our tenants and our property managers all the time that heating and cooling is one of the biggest and most important things for resident comfort and safety.
Well, I can add that one of the real advantages of going with smaller buildings is that we can have individual systems or systems to each tenant. Almost all smaller residential multifamily units these days are heated and cooled by heat pumps, air source heat pumps, which has the advantage of being maintenance free. It also has the advantage of individual thermostats for each unit. The biggest green technology actually isn't the technology, it's the ability to individually meter, i.e. it's the ability to put your consumption directly linked to your wallet. This works for rich, poor, this works for everyone. We've got small units, we can individually meter them. Most of the units will have several heads, so they can be adjusted by a remote control to each room. And on top of that, you get air conditioning and heating for the same initial cost. So this is now the rule. The technologies came in about 10 years ago. Everyone knows how to use them. They've been proven reliable, and I think we have a real advantage both to where or when we're building, in that we're building now, and with an eye toward the future, because these are emissions-free technologies.
And if I might just quickly add, the way we have this structured is indeed for tenant paid utilities. So the rent is actually reduced slightly to accommodate for a utility allowance. So that's based on the fact that tenants are paying utilities, so slightly lower rent. But that means that energy savings go to them. It's not captured by the owner or the property manager. So that is savings in the tenant's hands, which is, as Michael was saying, that critical feedback loop for making sure that what we're investing here in terms of green technology really improves multiple aspects of residents' lives.
Sort of going along with that, in terms of the energy systems, I know that you're involved with a passive solar build in Nantucket, not Nantucket, Northampton. And I know you can utilize passive techniques without looking for certification. So I'm just curious about if you if you are building some of the passive techniques in, what your hesitancy to maybe go the whole route in Wellfleet might be.
Yeah, Ivy, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
My pleasure. Yes. We believe that in this project, the strategy of passive solar placement and siting of each building really lends the opportunity to capture the efficiencies without too many artificial interventions. That being said, the forms are, as Michael said, simple enough and efficient enough to be able to minimize the energy load of each unit in the development. So we do intend on meeting stretch code, which is in the state of Massachusetts, a very high performing standard to begin with, and identify key areas where we can exceed stretch code requirements. So that is our strategy at this time before we evaluate during the design process if other architectural elements would lend themselves to passive house certification.
I have a little story on passive house, which will be really quick. First of all, in our profession, both nonprofit and in architecture, we all know how to do this. Anyone in active practice has been researching and employing these elements for several years. I went to an early seminar on passive house given by this brilliant gentleman from Switzerland, spoke with a heavy German accent. And he was showing all these charts and graphs about the ventilation system that had perfect air, perfect oxygen throughout the entire night, even with some innuendo. It was a brilliant presentation. But then I asked him, well, what about those days where you just want to throw open all the windows and let the breezes in? And he looked at me like I had 3 heads. You know, it's, I've shown all these charts and graphs showing that I had perfect air. So look, his English was perfect. We were just speaking different languages. So, you know, the choice of what we do and its appropriateness is a choice. If
I can jump in and just add, you know, one thing that Michael quickly touched on in the presentation was the fact that we're also really considering who is going to build these buildings, and we would love, you know, it makes sense, and we would love to employ a local Cape builder. And so while, you know, our architect or design team as developers were familiar with passive house, not so many builders are familiar with passive house. And so what's important is to be able to have this as a building opportunity for local firms that can get these buildings done well. So we're sort of looking at, you know, what are the big bang for your buck ways to get these buildings super green, while not necessarily going all the way to passive house certification. Though it's certainly borrowing, you know, the parts of passive house that are effective. And, you know, of course, as the design moves forward, if passive house is something that the community is really excited about, you know, it's something we'll explore more.
All right.
One other quick question. All 3 of these proposals are very extensive documents, and I suspect that there is detail hidden in them that I have missed. But one thing I was specifically looking for in your proposal was an affirmative statement about the shared wastewater system and what your view is on that. Because if you could just direct me to where I could find that in the proposal, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Yeah, it might have been an oversight if we did not explicitly state it. I think we stated we support it. The number is built into the budget. So the budget in here absolutely assumes the shared 44%. You know, that is like the assumed path here. So I apologize if that was not more clearly stated in the affirmative, but it is in the budget. It is assumed in the numbers.
Okay, and I'm going to ask one last question and allow others to. One of the consistent comments we heard not just from project managers, but also from the occasional tenant we spoke with was adequacy of parking. And it seemed like that was an issue with all, with at least two and perhaps all three of the projects we had conversations with. I'm just curious how you, what was the logic behind looking at 1.1 spaces per unit when that seems like it's on the low side?
Mhm. Yeah, so we really focused on our unit mix here, which is, as I mentioned, 60% studios and 1 bedrooms, which we see, very rarely have more than one car per household. Sometimes we see households with no car. So that was the basis of the 1.15 parking ratio. And again, moving to keep the parking on site minimal. Certainly, that there is ample space to add more parking should that be needed. But our experience for this range of unit mix is that a 1.15 can be adequate.
And by the way, that count does not include the parking on the left field side of the ball fields, which is very appropriate overflow if necessary, but we don't think it is.
A quick funding question. Since you have so many wonderful projects in the works and in the pipeline, would any of them interfere with getting funding for this project in the first or second round? Do you have others in the pipeline that might be coming for funding in place of this one?
That's a great question. Yeah, Andy, do you want to? Yeah.
Sure. I mean, it's a great, very fair question. And honestly, that's a huge part of my job is juggling that exact issue. So we're confident that we would be able to move this quickly, based on the other things that we have going on, but it's a very fair question.
Okay.
And additionally, there are, Andy, do you want to mention the lightning rounds that, we have looked at the pipeline and fit this in, and additionally, DHCD has had some, what they're calling lightning rounds, which are extra funding rounds that are enabling us to move more properties through the pipeline. So I'm not sure, Andy, how many projects we've been able to move forward, in the past 12 months, but it's more than we typically have.
Exactly. And, we're very thankful that both at the state and the federal level, there's already been an increase in the amount of affordable housing funding that's allowed everybody's pipeline to move more quickly. And as Lindsay said, we have been successful with that, with the added round this year. And, we're hopeful, obviously we don't know what Congress is going to do, but we're hopeful that there will be even greater increase with the, new legislation that is hopefully going to be passed in the next, short period of time.
Indeed, we certainly hope for that. Well, we did get started a little late because of the confusion with logging on. I'd like to offer the rest of the, I think you've covered most of the issues we had talked about as a committee, but is there anybody on a committee that has one more burning question? Jan?
I do, Elaine. I'm interested in, the comparison of these three, that the way you've designed the driveways or the entrance and exits or whatever you want to call the roads, you have not connected the two by road except for emergency equipment. The other two designs that we have a circular movement from the lower part through the upper part. And I wonder how you envision turning around and having people have easy entrance and exits.
That's a great question, Jan. Brian, do you mind if I kick that over to you and you can speak to how our siting of the specimen trees on the rear of the site in part informed that decision, and our analysis of circulation in the schoolhouse corner?
Yeah, sure, Lindsay, that's not a problem. Yeah, Jan, that's a good question. And we did look at a couple different options, working closely with with Michael. And as I said in our analysis and during the presentation, that we really did look at the preservation of the buffers between the ball fields and the development to be a really key element of our design approach. So we thought we were able to not provide that circulation between the two spaces, except for the emergency access, and still allow for the vehicles to turn around. Obviously, as we develop the design further, we would look into exactly how the dimensions of that turnaround, but we think there is certainly opportunities to provide access for someone to get in and out of their parking spaces. In particular, mainly related, I'm assuming it's mainly related to the schoolhouse corner lot, but we certainly think it's a workable solution. And we thought that the preservation of the trees, and we also identified the most significant oak trees were right in that buffer area where, if we were to connect the proposed developments and not infringe upon the water tower access, it would have impacted some of that area. So that was really sort of the design process and how we came to our conclusion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, before we go, one very important person that I neglected to introduce in the beginning is our Assistant Town Administrator, Rebecca Slick. Rebecca, could you just say hello to everybody?
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. I just got back after being off for 2 weeks, so it was nice. This is my first day back to the task force, so nice to meet all of you.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have Rebecca with us, but she has also encountered the struggles of finding appropriate housing in our area, which is an issue. And so she's very aware of everything that we're dealing with, but we really welcome her and we want to support her and have, work with her closely as we work with this project. So thank you all, community builders, very much. We appreciate, it was an excellent presentation. We're going to now take a little short break. I'm not sure how you do that on Zoom. I guess.
Okay, well, I think what I will do is I will, first of all, revoke Lindsay's host privileges. And I'll pause the recording and for a few minutes to give people a chance to get up and get something to drink or whatever. But our next presentation is scheduled for, I believe, 11:15.
Yes.
And I will be back before that to deal with any issues that might arise in terms of connectivity. So if that's all right, we'll just stop the recording for right now and start and just take a quick break and be back at, say, 10 minutes past 11.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again,
Thank
very
you.
much. Appreciated it.
So the recording's being stopped at 11:05. Yeah, I've restarted the recording. It's 11:10 a.m. and we will start the next presentation at 11:15. That's when we've scheduled it. So I see Lorene, and I think you're going to be doing the presentation. So I will make you a co-host so that you can screen share, because I've limited screen sharing. But we'll wait in case anybody else needs to step away from the meeting for a second. And I see Bill Hinchy in the audience. Bill, I don't have anybody from Civico who's identified themselves as being the presenter. And so if that's information that you have sometime before the 1 o'clock presentation, if you could get that to Elaine or myself, that would be great.
I will, Harry. Thank you.
Yep.
It should be Taylor Bearden, and I'll be sure to communicate that to him right away.
Okay.
Yeah, Taylor had contacted me this morning, so.
Okay, so I have a name to look for. That's what I wanted. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Harry. I'll go back on mute. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I'm going to be turning off my video. I'm just running the slideshow so that I'm not a distraction from the rest of our team.
That's all right. Excuse me, let me leave that.
Let's see. Okay, I'm looking for one more of our committee to come back in. There we go. It's not quite 11:15, but I do want to apologize for the confusion of the links, but I'm glad that I think everybody has gotten the right information now, and phew. I think we could start with introductions from our committee so that we'll be ready to start right away with POA at 11:15. Welcome, everybody. I'm Elaine McElroy, Chair of the 95 Lawrence Road Task Force. I'm going to introduce our members because some people have to stay on mute because of work going on around their homes and stuff like that. So when I introduce you, if you would just raise your hand. So our your hand. Harry's up there in the corner. We have Jay Horowitz, Kathleen Bacon, Jan Plowey, Jim Hood, and Gary Sorkin.
I'm here.
You're there. And Olga Khan. And we have our wonderful new Assistant Town Administrator, Rebecca Slick, here also.
Hello.
Okay, I don't think I missed anybody. Harry is taking care of the screen sharing. I'm trying to keep my eye on letting people in, but we want to welcome POA and CDP here this morning and look forward to your presentation and then some time for questions afterwards from the committee.
And I've made Lorene a co-host. If there's anybody else from the POA team that needs to be able to screen share, just let me know and I'll enable that for whoever else we need. Thank you.
So shall we
just waiting for.
Oh,
Excuse me, have you turned down the recording?
Yes, we're recording and who's going to begin for POA CDP?
I am, Elaine.
Good morning.
This is, Jay Coburn. Good morning. So I'm Jay Coburn, the Chief Executive Officer of the Community Development Partnership. And I know many of you, but for those who don't, I've been a resident of the Outer Cape since 1997. I've created a small business and I've served on the Truro Select Board. All experiences that have informed my deep understanding of our communities and how we should be addressing our housing affordability challenges. And I'm really pleased to kick off our presentation today. Our team has crafted a bold proposal to build high quality housing affordable to a range of incomes and household sizes. We are going to develop an environmentally sustainable property, nearly net zero in energy consumption. And we're going to create a community with a resilient and elegant design that draws on local building traditions. This new neighborhood is a once in a generation opportunity to build a significant number of affordable homes in Wellfleet. We're proposing a community that provides housing for a diverse range of Wellfleet residents, from seniors and families living on very modest incomes to working families and empty nesters struggling to downsize into local and affordable housing. Features a mix of unit sizes, a range of affordability, and a building design that will attract financial partners because it can be delivered on budget and will remain financially healthy over the long term. And our project will be built to the highest level of environmental sustainability, healthy, all-electric, energy-efficient homes. And we preserve the existing landscape while minimizing environmental impacts to the surrounding neighbors. Since our inception in 1992, the Community Development Partnership has been active in Wellfleet, providing affordable housing and nurturing small businesses. We have a deep understanding of the town through our work making loans to shellfishing and other small businesses in the community, providing housing rehab services for low-income Wellfleet residents, and housing 12 families at our affordable housing development at Fredville Way. Our partners at Preservation for Affordable Housing have been developing best-in-class affordable housing for 2 decades. They have extensive experience in building and managing communities on the Lower Cape. The CDP-POA partnership combines our strengths, the sophisticated development capability of POA with the local, deeply informed expertise of the Community Development Partnership. We believe our team is uniquely well suited to collaborate with the town and deliver the project that is best for Wellfleet's year-round residents. Over the next 20 minutes, my colleagues will discuss the experience and capacity of our team to get this project built, details on the affordability of the proposed units, the financial feasibility of the project, and our green design for the site, buildings and infrastructure, and our commitment to environmental sustainability. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Julie Kramer from POA, to talk about our team's experience and capacity.
Hi there, good morning. I am Julie Kramer and I work for Preservation of Affordable Housing, or POA as we're known. When I'm not working there, I also chair my town's Affordable Housing Trust. So I appreciate the amount of work it has taken you all to get to this point, and I congratulate you. POA is a nonprofit developer, owner, and manager of affordable housing. POA's work on the Cape began in 2006. We now own and manage 670 apartment homes on Cape Cod and have an additional 30 currently underway in Brewster. POA's development work on Cape Cod and our commitment to those who live here is unwavering. Over the past decade, we have secured over $57 million of low-income housing tax credits and over $16 million of state and local affordable housing resources to build and preserve affordable housing on the Cape. I have had the great fortune of working as a development project manager on all of POA's Cape Cod properties. As a result, I know more than I ever thought I would about nitrogen loading and septic systems and wastewater treatment plants. I'm sure by now you all feel the same way. POA and CDP respect the need for a proper wastewater solution and recognize it is a critical piece of any affordable housing on Cape Cod. POA has designed and built 2 wastewater treatment plants, one in Brewster at King's Landing and a highly sophisticated zero net nitrogen one at Canal Bluffs. I believe some of you visited that property. The balance of our properties on Cape Cod that are not on town sewer are IA septic systems aimed at reducing nitrogen loading. This includes the one built at Melpit Farm in Dennis. And we are proud to say that Melpit Farm is also the first affordable near net zero multifamily housing community on Cape Cod. POA's experience with permitting multifamily housing through the comprehensive permit process, or the 40B process, is extensive. 2 of our existing Cape Cod communities were permitted under 40B, and we secured a 3rd 40B permit in March for a project we are building in Mashpee. CDP is our local partner for this important project and will ensure our development work, once again, meets the needs and goals of the community. As our development partner, CDP will lead the permitting work, coordinate the lottery process, and be part of the ownership entity. The POA CDP team has the experience, capacity, and commitment to successfully and sustainably bring critically needed year-round housing to the town of Wellfleet. Alex Finnegan will now speak to our proposal's affordability focus and our financial feasibility.
Thanks, Julie. Hi, everyone. So as Jay said, this is a rare opportunity to build affordable housing on the Lower Cape. And because of this, we want to use this opportunity to provide housing to a broad array of residents. So we have proposed a range of affordability that we believe is consistent with the town's criteria of 30% to 120% AMI and addresses a range of needs, from lower wage households working in seasonal service jobs and retail to middle income households in construction and entertainment, and many town employees such as teachers, police officers, and firefighters. Specifically, we have proposed 8 units, which will be reserved for households with very modest incomes in the 30 to 50% of AMI range, working in minimum wage jobs or living on Social Security. Then 27 units will be restricted to households earning up to 60% of AMI. So these will be affordable to individuals and households generally earning from $40,000 to $60,000 per year, working in seasonal service jobs, single earner households, retirees living on savings, et cetera. And then finally, we have proposed 11 units that will not be income restricted under a state or federal program, but rents will be affordable to households and seniors that don't qualify under the low-income housing tax credit program. We decided not to restrict these units with the workforce housing subsidy because in our experience on the Cape, workforce housing subsidy in smaller seasonally driven markets like the Cape sometimes ends up being too restrictive, and it risks shutting out some renters who may not qualify, but nevertheless have a real need for affordable housing. So our intention for these unrestricted units is to have the flexibility to meet the local middle income market. We think this market is likely in the range of 70% to 100% of AMI in terms of rent, but under no circumstance will we rent these units above 120% of AMI rent. However, if the town would like to establish an income and rent restriction for these units, for example, 100 or 120% of AMI, we would be happy to do so. So regarding financial feasibility, we know from experience that a realistic development budget, particularly in the current pricing environment, is absolutely critical to delivering on the vision put forth in a proposal. We have been consistently developing projects on time and on budget in the Cape for more than a decade. And we are confident in our development budget from that experience, but also because we have real-time pricing information from our project, Brewster Woods, which is currently under construction. So on this slide are examples of some of the funding sources we have successfully secured for our Cape projects. And we have extensive experience using all of the sources we've proposed for the Lawrence Road project. I'd like to emphasize that we feel that the use of low-income housing tax credits is important here. Without tax credits, this community will not be able to support some of the more affordable homes that we feel are needed. And it would also be more at risk over the long term of operating difficulties if the rental market is not as strong or as consistent as underwritten. I'd also like to point out that we recently secured a MassWorks infrastructure grant at Brewster Woods, and we've been successful at securing 4 other MassWorks grants at projects in Massachusetts. So this is a financing tool that we have a lot of experience with and we feel is particularly important here. And then finally, we believe that a realistic long-term operating budget that provides for sustainable, resident-focused, on-site property management is just as important for the long-term health and success of a community as the initial development budget. And our team's experience owning and managing properties locally on the Cape and our local existing staff enable us to take a high degree of confidence in the operating budget we've put forth here. And ultimately in our ability to operate a community that residents are really going to love and that the town can be proud of. I'll now turn it over to Gail Sullivan, our project architect, to talk a bit about design. Thanks.
Gail, I think you're on mute.
I apologize. Besides being the managing principal of Studio G Architects, I'm also a part-time Wellfleet resident. So 3 principles are shaping this design: affordable homes for year-round residents in a sustaining, livable community with deep environmental sustainability and resilience. And these have driven all of our decisions. Sustainability starts with the site design. We build on already disturbed land at the upper area beside the ball field and at the old classroom building facing Long Pond Road, and limit the development area to 50% of this site to limit the tree clearing by locating 22 units at the lower village. The upper village houses the families and larger households in 2- and 3-bedroom townhouses in clusters of buildings, 3 or 4 units each. The lower village houses older adults and smaller households in 1- and 2-bedroom flats. And to minimize conflict with the school around traffic, we've proposed a one-way road from Long Pond to Lawrence. But if the town prefers 2 ways, it's easily changed. It's already wide enough. The community and maintenance buildings are in the middle at the bend in the road. The parking at the upper village is 1.5 spaces per unit, and it's interspersed between the buildings. The parking lot at the lower village is just over a 1-to-1 ratio. We've protected the water tower easement completely and stayed away from it. Landscape architect Darshini Joseph is going to talk a little about our landscape ideas right now.
Thank you, Gail. The woodland between Lawrence and Long Pond Roads is a typical Cape Cod secondary growth forest, thriving on sandy soil with distinctive pitch pines and oak forest species. Our intent is to preserve as much of this native woodland as possible. The site layout preserves all the woodlands downslope toward Old Long Pond Road and beside the water tower easement. Natural vegetative buffers are preserved and gaps are infilled along Lawrence Road and between the ball field and new townhouses, where there's a significant stand of mature pine trees and undergrowth. We aim for 30 feet deep landscape buffers. An accessible fitness and walking path meanders through the site to connect upper and lower villages. Sustainable infrastructure includes stormwater management, as well as bike parking and electric charging stations.
So I want to emphasize that this is concept design. We assume that this design would evolve over time with an interactive process with the town. And we've heard some questions about the design and its alignment with the RFP. I want to say we focused really closely on the guidelines, the references to the Cape vernacular and the mid-century modern houses. We love the 18th and 19th century Cape vernacular. The left-hand images are actually from my Pine Hollow neighborhood. And they're simple year-round houses, seasonal cottages. They fit beautifully in the landscape. The top right is our inspiration actually for the townhouse clusters. These are the buildings that are aggregated over a period of decades as they grow. One of the interesting things here is in the 1930s, the Federal Housing Administration actually promoted Cape houses as the national model for affordable family housing. Seems ironic, right? They lauded the simple functional forms responding to nature. Simplicity, authenticity, and response to nature are principles we've applied in our design. And the mid-century modernists took that and joined it with industrial materials to create a new kind of architecture that also responds to the land. It reaches out to the land, low profile roofs, large windows to enjoy the landscape, and large decks and terraces are typical. And Wellfleet is rich in its variety of housing types built over centuries as well as more recent decades. And innovation continues as people absorb new ideas like sustainability. So our nearest neighbor is the old Long Pond Road residential area, and it contains quite a variety from old vernacular to contemporary houses. Roof lines are varied, right? There are gables, there's monitor here, there's shed roofs, there's a complete variety there. And there are 3- and 4-story houses there. The one in the middle interests me because it's 3.5 stories facing the road, and you can barely see it because of the tree screen, which is just our intention for how we'll screen this development. So for a sustaining livable community, the townhouses here face each other in a neighborly relationship of front yards and front porches, inviting social interaction. For variety and rhythm and distinct identities, the townhouse groups vary in their massing and in their roof lines. The 3-bedroom units overhang their entry porches, while the 2-bedroom units have these extended front porch roofs like you see in the foreground here. And the roof direction varies from one townhouse grouping to another. The townhouses step back and forth to create individual sitting porches at the front with a walkway to the road, which also creates semi-private covered patios at the rear to extend life outdoors. Although it's not shown here, the houses will have varied siding, a mix of vertical and horizontal clapboard, as well as shingles, of course, so that we define each dwelling and also so we vary it by cluster so that each of them is a variation on a theme, though it's not all worked out yet. And our design is a creative mix of New England and modern design, as called for in the design guidelines, which we've highlighted in green here, including individual yards and walks, the varied siding. Entries vary in style, glass, and accent colors. And I want to note 21st century design demands sustainability and resilience. And these two things have literally shaped these buildings. The roof lines are shaped to maximize the south and west facing slopes in order to get the PVs, the greatest number of PVs possible. The roof overhangs and the shading devices will reduce unwanted solar heat gain. Banded windows, which you called for, will give views to the landscape and daylight the interiors, as will clear story windows, which exist in many of the townhouse clusters. Every room here is designed to have 2 or more operable windows and typically cross-ventilated for natural ventilation. So we knew that there might be some concern about the lower village design. It wasn't intuitive, I think. It's a 2.5-story building along Long Pond Road. We think it makes sense for 3 reasons. Wellfleet's need to house the older adults that Jay was talking about. An elevator building with services allows people to age in place gracefully and with dignity. Preservation of the woodlands. 22 units here on the ground of the former classroom building allows us to leave half of this site, half untouched. And the RFP sustainability goals, a single envelope for 22 units is far more efficient than the townhouse clusters for energy. I want to point out that this building sits behind the existing classroom front wall. 60% of it is 3-story, the rest 1 and 2. And there's a precedent in town, actually, for 3-story buildings. A height analysis demonstrates that our building is actually in the range with the Historical Society police station nearby and the old Duck Creek Inn. While not as of right under zoning, it is part of the project zoning relief that would be applied for under 40B. And here you do see the varied siding. We use vertical board at the 3rd floor, horizontal clapboards at the lower floors, and the 2-story portion at the end facing Lawrence Road is shingle. This kind of approach breaks the mass of a building. I want to note all units here are fully visitable, not just the entry. So anybody who's mobility impaired can get into and around every unit. And all units are adaptable for tenants' mobility needs and for aging in place, because all the bathrooms and kitchens are size sufficient for wheelchair turning radius. The front lobby has a mail and package area. We recognize that lots of people get things delivered, and it's really important to have package rooms. 2 adjacent management offices provide a lot of resident engagement on a regular basis. And residents have amenities under their roof, all easily accessible by elevator. The shared laundry room and tenant storage are in the basement. A large 1st floor community room can support push-in services.
The community room faces Lawrence Road and opens to a large shaded patio, community gardens, and recreational area. Along Long Pond Road, a mature grove of rhododendrons, pines, and oaks is preserved and infilled as a natural vegetated buffer. The existing pines on site are nearly 40 feet high. The freestanding community building is the heart of the community. Tall windows daylight the space, and glass doors open to a large gathering patio with a natural children's play yard and community gardens beyond, which connect to existing woodland paths.
And although there's also community spaces in the building on Long Pond Road, the idea here is this building is usable by all residents. It's larger, and it has mailboxes and package room for the upper village tenants, but also a flexible office meeting space, and then a much larger community room with a kitchenette. It also has a shared laundry. And I want to note, shared laundries actually help build community, especially when they're associated with other community spaces. They're also more energy efficient than individual unit laundries. And if there's a need for more tenant storage, it would be easy enough to put a basement here for that. So now let's talk about sustainability, one of my favorite topics. So we apply a holistic approach. Sustainability is integrated into every aspect of site and building design. We angled the road to maximize the passive solar orientation of the most houses. And we limited west-facing windows. The long walls of the buildings face within 15 degrees of south to maximize the quantity and the efficiency of photovoltaic panels on the roofs. The issue with things like small gables and dormers is that that actually reduces how much PV we could have. Now, I'll summarize the building design strategies, and I hope we have time to talk about some of them in more depth. Low energy design in envelope, systems, lights, appliances. Decarbonize the structure and the materials to reduce CO2 emissions from the buildings. Conserve water with water-saving fixtures and use rainwater for irrigation. Healthy homes, critically important, well-ventilated and tempered year-round with only healthy interior materials. And climate resilience in the landscape, the buildings, and the community as a whole. And that includes the wastewater treatment facility, which POA and Coastal Engineering have unique experience with, and the team has committed to. So I want to talk about one aspect of that right now, low energy design. The key is passive house. It'll add about 2% cost to the budget, but that's been factored in. And the advantage is that it gives us a really efficient building envelope. So the steps, this graph on the right talks about EUI, and EUI stands for energy use intensity. It's a measurement that allows us to measure whether, regardless of the fuel source. So we want to drive it down. And this shows us how we do that. Step one, architecture, well-insulated, airtight building, high-performing windows and doors, and natural ventilation. Our competitor misspoke. There is no issue with passive house and operable windows. We would not design housing without them. Step two, the building systems, no fossil fuels. Modern electric heat pump systems, also known as mini splits, provide heat and cooling controlled individually by each tenant, and continuous mechanical ventilation in every occupied space. Step three, renewables. And the point of this graph is we only do the renewables after we've done the hard work of the other things. That pushes that EUI down. And you can see we set a standard passive house EUI at 20 here, but our energy model shows that the lower village hits 17 EUI before any photovoltaics, no renewables, and we're already at 17. That means the lower village can probably get to net zero or very, very close. The upper village I mentioned was a little less efficient. So that's at 11.92 with the PV arrays that we showed. So easy enough to get this project to near net zero. Studio G is currently doing a passive house, energy positive affordable housing in city-owned property in Boston. So we do know how to do this. Jay?
Thank you, Gail. So I hope that our presentation has helped deepen your understanding of our proposal and our commitment to building high-quality housing that is affordable, environmentally sustainable, resilient, and elegantly designed in a way that draws on local building traditions. While we understand that you must base your recommendations to the select board on what we have proposed in response to the town's RFP, I want to assure you that our proposal is the beginning of a conversation with Wellfleet's officials and citizens on how to build a new neighborhood that addresses a broad range of community needs. One of the benefits of the 40B process and the public hearings that are required is the opportunity they provide for us to work together to fine-tune our vision and perfect our proposal. Through this process, we can adapt and modify our plans so that we create a project that truly meets the town's bold and inspiring vision for a neighborhood that addresses the affordable housing crisis and leads to a more equitable and diverse year-round community in Wellfleet. Thank you very much for your time today, and we would be pleased to address your questions.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we do have some questions. He covered a lot of our issues, but I think there's still a few more things to just ask in a little more detail. And I guess one of them was we just really wanted to be clear on the Lawrence Road Preservation Partners and what the relation, you mentioned a little bit of CDP's relationship, but I don't know if someone could discuss that in a little more detail.
Sure, I can take that one. CDP approached us about this incredible opportunity, and we discussed a lot of things about our approach and how POA does their work. And it was amazing to me how aligned our missions were. So when we discussed how we would tackle this, we recognize that the low-income housing tax credit program does require the developer to have a strong balance sheet, to have done this work before, to be competitive. And so we we will take the lead on the financing piece of this project, POA will. CDP will be our boots on the ground. They will be our local presence. They will be work through the permitting with us, with the 40B approach. They are the ones that are going to bring the feedback to the development team and make sure that we design and build a property that they can be proud of. The last thing I will say is that, Jay and I discussed, we knew we needed a creative and committed team, that, affordable housing is hard work and that, together we could really be something that both organizations can truly take a part of and be proud of.
I could just add a little bit, Elaine. For us at the Community Development Partnership, we are a nonprofit community development corporation. Our board is entirely made up of Lower Cape residents. And while we are a strong and financially healthy organization, to do a project of this magnitude is just not something we could do by ourselves or had the expertise to do it. And it really was a no-brainer for us to partner with POA. We are both nonprofits. We are both deeply committed to listening to and collaborating and working with our local communities as we make decisions. We both have a deep commitment to serving the wide income range of our communities. And one of the things that I think we really liked, with working with POA is, that they manage their own properties. They have incredible resources, particularly to support the low-income families, the very low-income families that would live in this neighborhood. And so, bringing both of our strengths from both of our resources together, and then collaborating with Studio G Architects and Gail Sullivan, who also deeply understands our community, it really just made a whole lot of sense of why we would work together. And having a partner like POA, allows us to be involved in a project that is of a much greater scale than the other projects that we have done on the Cape. And I would also just echo too that POA is not a stranger to actually partnering with community development corporations. POA has partnered with Housing Assistance Corporation on several of the other projects that they've done together on the Cape.
Thank you. Harry, do you have a follow-up or another question?
Actually, when I first drafted these questions, it was with the knowledge that not all of the questions applied to all of the proposals. And many of the things that I was interested in learning about when I drafted the questions really were touched on by the presentation today. So I think I'll defer to others and just listen this time.
Okay. Anybody else on the committee want to throw in a new question? Kathleen?
Unmuted. Good morning, everybody. To Jay and Julie Kramer, how fast do you think you can get up and running with regard to the funding rounds? What projects are in the pipeline for POA at the moment? Again, Elaine asked this question earlier, and I think it pertains to POA as well to ask it again.
Yes, thank you, Kathleen. POA is very careful about making commitments to towns, especially towns where there is a real desire to move the project along quickly. I think if you spoke to any of the towns we worked with on the Cape, you'd hear this same focus. You'd hear the fact that we're transparent, that we know when to push and where to push, and that our pipeline has never meant that their project wasn't prioritized. And that indeed is the case here. Many of you probably know there is another project in Provincetown that there was recently an RFP on, and POA made the commitment to say, we're not going to go after that project. we are focused on Wellfleet. If we are lucky enough to be chosen, we want to make sure our runway is clear and that all of our focus is on this project and is on the importance of the 40B. You know, that is something that we have found has been very key to making sure you line up particularly well with the funding rounds. So if you don't move that 40B process productively with an eye towards the funding rounds, you can miss a funding round. And you know, we value the process, the 40B process. We have always found that process has made our work better and has allowed us to really hear from the community, to do things that maybe didn't enter into our minds from the start. So we don't want to rush that process. We in no way want to rush that process, but we do want to make sure the town understands how that aligns with the funding rounds, because you need to have a permit to show that you are ready to break ground on a project. You know, Jay, I don't know if you want to add anything else.
Julie, I think you've really well covered it, and you know, I would just emphasize that our decision was key to not go after the Provincetown project because of the conflict that could potentially present. And I would also just point out too that POA just has extensive experience and very strong relationships with the Department of Housing and Community Development and working collaboratively. Aaron Gornstein, who is the president of POA, is the former undersecretary for the Department of Housing and Community Development in the Patrick administration. So there's strong relationships and the great ability to collaborate and work with DHC to move through the funding process.
Okay, so back to Julie. This is Kathleen again. Am I correct in thinking that you're looking at having permitting in place and a build to hopefully build 2024, 2025? Was that not what we were seeing in your proposal?
That's correct. You know, we will do everything and all things to get the funding we need to build this property. You know, DHCD does have typically one funding round. They do come, they do, you know, most years have what they call a mini funding round. And we have actually been very, very fortunate to have applied for those mini rounds and have been, you know, successfully awarded housing tax credits in those rounds. So we have our ear to the ground. We, you know, the other thing I just want to add as an overlay to all of this is we know how to move both a wastewater treatment plant and housing across the same path, because one can't happen without the other. It's impossible. You need your groundwater discharge permit in order to build. You can't say it's coming next month, trust us. You've got to move those two really in parallel. And that has been something we did at Canal Bluffs. It's something we did at King's Landing. And knowing the nuances of both of the timing of both of those really important pieces is something we're just really good at.
Thank you.
Yeah. From some of the other developments that we've toured and that I've looked at, it seems that there can be some real need for tenant education about using mini splits effectively.
Right.
And then I've also seen some wonderful articles of passive affordable housing that really brought the community together to educate them. So I'm wondering what your relationship to what you've proposed, your bold design, as you call it, how you would work with residents to assure that it was used properly and effectively.
You know, Elaine, that's an incredible question. It's a really great question, because we struggle with this, or I should say we used to struggle with this every time we discussed a new heating system, right? Are our residents going to understand it? Are they going to use it effectively? Are we putting, this expensive equipment in and not getting the benefit of this equipment? So our design and technical team, along with our management company, and Terry Powell Rand, who's on this call with us, is our COO of our management company, Powell Communities. We have created resident information guides that really speak to how to use the thermostats. Many of the thermostats we put in our properties are programmable, right?
Right.
I barely know how to program, right? And I'm an engineer, undergrad, So we do a lot of educational work. We create, meetings on site with the thermostat in hand and help to program in a very step-by-step process. We can share with you some of those guides. It is critically important that residents understand, especially in some of our communities where there's a utility allowance. So if the resident is smart and uses the systems the way they should be, it's actually money in their pocket because they are given a utility allowance to operate their unit. And if they take all the measures we tell them to take, they could actually benefit from that. So it's something that POA takes very close care of. At Melpit Farm, for instance, we have sub-meters on all the units. So we can tell precisely what unit is using too much energy, at least in our eyes, is using too much energy, right? And we meet with that resident and we say, are you doing this? Are you doing, why do you have a peak at night of energy? Are you leaving your air conditioning on when you could open a window? Are you, let's talk about it. So that is a great question, and I will say that it is a part of our work to make sure everyone is committed to sustainability and energy efficiency, not just a building owner.
Julie, can I jump in to add something? Because I think the design teams often have an important role to play here too, to contribute to this. So we also we do a lot of affordable housing in a lot of schools, and we're working very hard to make sustainability visible in those schools, as in the housing. And so one thing that can be incorporated, in fact, like in the community room and in the community building, is some information about what the features are of this place. There really is an opportunity to build a community around this intentionality, and people can feel proud of it. And we do part of that by building into the design how we make it visible so that people understand it. And then how do we make manuals graphically interesting and easy to get through so they don't look like engineering instructions that none of us want to read. Right. Sorry, Julie. So we are more than happy to do that. This is something we're thinking about constantly as we put in new systems into buildings.
Does anybody else on our committee have a question? I guess I also just wanted to ask how you do work, should you be selected, how you do work with not only the town, but the stakeholders and the neighbors, and what have you done in the past with other developments? What would you consider doing here?
So let me try, Elaine, to take a lead on this. This is certainly, one of the things that the CDP would bring to the table, as well as POA's previous experience. And I would first to start off to congratulate the town on already a pretty extensive community engagement process, from the community meeting, that you held 2 summers ago, that we were at, to the meeting that was recently held with neighbors. And so I think that is the key, is really a very proactive out in the community process of sharing information, of seeking input, of meeting individually with neighbors and abutters. Not just having a workshop at the library that people can come to, but really going and knocking the doors of the abutters of the neighborhood and answering questions and establishing contacts and relationships and a dialogue going forward. And so, that is the kind of extensive outreach that we would be doing both at the very early stages of the process as have already been done and continuing, but also through the 40B process, and then empowering neighbors to be a part of those public hearings and part of those discussions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I echo everything Jay has said, and we respond to a lot of RFPs. I am happy to see how much outreach you have done, and that this isn't a sneak attack on your neighbors, that you are bringing them to the table, you are asking all the right questions, they are responding appropriately to their concerns. So we feel that this is the true meaning of a friendly 40B, right? You have been transparent. All of your work has been, recorded and placed on the website for folks to listen to and respond to. So we would meet the neighbors where they live. That's part of the beauty of having CDP as our local, as our local partner, is that we're not flying in from Boston. Right? We're actually recognizing that Wellfleet and the critical needs of the environment in Wellfleet have to be part of our design, have to be on the forefront. So I will also say that we recently applied for a MassWorks grant at Brewster, for Brewster Woods, and John Springfield, who's on the call with us as well from POA, was instrumental in making sure the town understood the their work in that mass grant work, and sort of shoulder to shoulder working through questions and concerns and applications and all the things that sort of can really bog down a town that who's never done a MassWorks grant before. So we were very much a partner in that application and in that piece of the work.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's been great to hear from you today. We appreciate your presentation. And we have a long break now. I think we're scheduled for 12:30 for our third one. Maybe we'll see if most people are here and try to start earlier, but otherwise we're going to take a nice long break. But thank you again, POA and CDP. And thank you to the committee for hanging in here all morning.
Have a great weekend, you all.
You
Great.
too. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks so
everyone.
much, everybody. Really appreciate your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, what do we want to do now, folks? We will have to wait, I think.
So we're due back at 12:30. Is that right, Elaine?
That's right. I knew I
Okay.
probably should have scheduled it for 12:15.
Okay, well, okay. So what I'll do is I'll pause the recording. It's now 12:04, and I'll come back at about 12:25, and that'll give people a chance to grab a bite to eat. So we're going to stop the recording right now, and we'll resume shortly before 12:30.
Okay, thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Thank you.